Hi, I'm Sean.
And I'm Kelly.
And we're Pure Pod. We're a Canberra-based eco-fashion label that's been going for about 8 years. We utilise the microcredit system to put together a new line of clothing for kids for Dirt Girl World.
And tell us a little bit more about Pure Pod. How did it get started? And how have you grown? You've been around for a while. Tell us about some of the challenges you faced.
I worked in the fashion industry my whole career. So I studied at the CIT in Canberra and moved to Melbourne and worked in like big corporation fashion and mostly in kids wear. So I was doing all licensed products from Disney to Barbie to Warner Brothers and generic kids wear for Myer and Target and all the big majors through New Zealand and Australia. And then eventually kind of got pretty burnt out in that career because it was really full on, and we moved to Byron Bay and I studied to be a yoga teacher up there. And then Sean and I started Pure Pod because it was always a passion of mine to do something that was ethical in probably the third biggest polluting industry in the world. So when I was working for the big majors in Melbourne, I always, especially in children's wear, I always had a big inner struggle within myself with the pollution, the chemicals that were in the clothing and that they were putting it on children. So for me, it was a natural response to the area that I wanted to go, and because of Sean, we were able to do it together. We started it, of course, in Byron Bay, as you would, in a place like that, and we've been going for about 8 years now. So, and then we've moved our family back to Canberra because this is where we come from. And in that time, we were in contact with the owners and the creators of Dirt Girl World, which is an ABC2 kids program, and it's all over the world. It's shown all over the world.
So have you found there's much demand from parents, especially to find a clothing line that doesn't have all of those chemicals in it?
Absolutely. For children, because they're, it started, organics I suppose, started with coffee, chocolate, now it's gone to food, and now it's beginning in clothing. And it has been very slow in Australia, but in Europe, Canada, America and the UK, it's a lot faster growing than here, and even India actually, because a lot of our textiles come from there. So there's a big push.
Yeah, I think people realise that they understand what they put in their body can affect them, but they're realising now what they put on their body, and sometimes for a long period of time. We wear clothes 10, 12 hours a day, and if that's chemical-induced clothing, it's just soaking into the biggest organ, which is your skin. So.
Yeah, and because I'm really into health and well-being, being a yoga teacher as well, so I'm looking at people's physical and mental and spiritual forms, or obviously clothing, and because I'm creative as well, obviously clothing is another step with that. And we find that a lot of women, they're looking after their bodies from a health perspective with exercise and food, and then the clothing is the next step that they go on to. And often our age group of women that we sell to are 30 plus, so they have little kids, and so it's kind of a natural progression for us. But probably, talking of challenges, is to actually educate the Australian public about, this is your biggest organ in your body, and if you're putting healthy things into your body, why aren't you wearing healthy things on the outside as well? So.
And you've taken part in a number of sort of fashion events. I believe you were involved in Fash Fest last year.
Yeah.
Is it planned for this year as well?
We're not going to go on it this year, only because we're really focusing on Dirt Girl World, so we really need to put 100% of our energy into it. But the last 2 years we've been involved in it, and it was fantastic. It was so much fun and great to get the recognition out there. And the first year we were written up about with the Ethical Fashion Forum in the UK, being a part of Fash Fest. So we'd love to. Maybe next year we'll be a part of it again.
So what do you think about the fashion industry in Canberra? Do you think Canberrans are really open to designs that are created here?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Canberra has always, we grew up here in the 80s. We were 80s kids in Canberra. And there was always an underground creative, not just in fashion, but in the arts and music happening in Canberra. It was just virtually undiscovered. I think now, the time now is it's blossoming. the influx of different people from around the world and different states have really given Canberra, it's sort of coming of age. And I think people are realising now that there are fashion designers working here in Canberra that are equivalent to high street designers in Melbourne and Sydney. They don't need to do their Sydney trips. There's probably not enough of them, so they still do, but the quality of the work coming out of here is on par with Sydney and Melbourne designers.
And also that's what Fashion Fest helps, and any other little incubators, like even Lonsdale Street, all that sort of stuff. Like it helps to show the general public in Canberra that there's this amazing creative force here, that you can go and buy a beautiful handmade garment that's locally designed and created, and everything here, just as like Sean said, just as beautiful as Sydney and Melbourne. And there's like a really nice arts culture here. Like we're probably better supported here than when we were in Byron Bay, so which is great, and with local government support, and we have an array of amazing women that are a lot of scientists from the uni, or they might work in different environmental departments all around Canberra and around the government areas that are following us all the time and buying our clothes.
The talent used to leave Canberra, business talent, especially creative business talent, and I think now the talent's actually staying here, which will increase the size of the industry over years, instead of it all just going away, which left a big void here.
So you guys have just done, is it your first trade show?
No, we've done many trade shows over the years. Fashion Expos, Life in Style. This last one we did was purely for the Dirt Girl range, so it was a kids trade show.
Can you tell us about the experience?
It's tiring.
Lots of work before you get there.
Lots of work, big expectations, but it can have big payoff at the end of the day. It's putting your brand or your product in front of, for 4 days, in front of a group of buyers that are particularly coming there looking to buy product, trade, retailers. In order to do that, normally you'd have to get on the phone or get in the car and go from shop to shop to shop to shop to buy it. Whereas you get them all into one place. And at the moment in Sydney and Melbourne, it happens twice a year, they have what they call super size trade week. So there's 3 different trade shows going on at the one time. Giftware, homewares, fashion, and all in different places. So the buyers all come together for that special time to actually come and look at stuff and see what they can buy for the following season.
But it's also not just putting in front of buyers, it's also putting in front of the fashion community. So there's a lot of people walking through those trade shows, you don't even know who they are, but they're probably someone that can really catapult you into the next area. So you don't know
journalists.
And also, from big department stores or whoever, or investors, or shipping people, or whoever it is that as they're looking at you, so they might be watching you online. They actually come, almost anonymously, checking out what you're doing, and then you're showing it to the whole fashion community, not just to buyers, which then can put you into a whole nother league. Then trying to do, just a little designer range, and you're just selling it at local markets or whatever. It's taking you to another area, much more commercial. There's
a lot of preparation that goes into something like a trade show.
Yeah.
I know you guys have a really active online presence as well. There's a lot of working on the business that happens. How do you balance that all with the needs of a young family?
Well, as I say, there's not enough hours in the day. There never is.
And you always have guilt. There's always guilt.
Mother's
guilt, father's guilt.
Big guilt for family
you want to spend
time.
more time with them.
We only have one daughter, and I think we've always wanted her to be part of our business. So she's actually grown up with our business over the years, and this. One day we walked into the design room, and there was Ruby laying under the table with the fabric rolls, pretending, and that's what she said, I'm a fabric roll.
You have to pull her out. And when she was little, she used to just walk around with swatches of fabric and play with coat hangers.
I think it's only going to benefit her in the long run to have been part of our business, but to balance it becomes really hard.
Yeah, especially when you're doing trade shows or you're doing a lot of meetings away and things. Like before we had Ruby, we used to do loads of trade shows, so we'd be travelling from Byron Bay to Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane and stuff, doing trade shows all the time. So, and it was, you know, like you had a lot of work then, but now you're having to juggle a little one as well as, you know, and it's not like she's a 10-year-old or something, she's little and she wants to be with you and stuff like that.
How important is it to have a support network around you?
Oh, well, that's part of the reason why we moved back, because up in Byron we didn't have, like we had good friends, but there's, you know, it's different having family and things like that around. Plus also, you know, just for her well-being to know that she can go and visit her grandparents or her aunties and uncles and cousins, and especially being a single child too, so she's got all that support as well. Plus us coming home to Canberra, we had this network already set up, so we were already friends with people that had little kids, and so that's been fantastic for her too.
Support networks, I think, especially in small business and family business, you know, couples running business, it's invaluable.
Yeah.
It really is, whether it's looking after a child or supporting each of the people, because you don't actually often get to converse with a lot of people outside your own business, and so there's a lot of pressure put on. And if you can, you know, bump shoulders with somebody else outside that, it's fantastic.
Yeah, and you can talk about, you know, different issues that you're having with your business, because we've got other friends that have small businesses with children as well. So we're always like, you know, putting things on the table and talking about things, and then sometimes we'll look after their kids or they'll look after ours or whatever. But, you know, just having that support network just makes you kind of stronger as well as a unit, because you know that, you know, if you're busy and something happens, you've got someone that can help out. Like even my mum comes over and ties swing tickets, and she loves it, you know, like she just likes being a part of it and seeing it. If Sean's mum was closer, she would be loving to do things like that as well. So, and whenever she's come to visit us, she's been right in there helping out and stuff like that. So
I know that the two of you have attended a lot of the microcredit peer group things, and because it's a program that has that sort of support network around it, do you think that style of program works better for small businesses, where it's not just about advice, but it's that peer support type thing?
Yeah, definitely. I think, you know, I'm not a big networker, but I think in small business, and especially mini micro businesses, I call ours, they're great events to come to because you learn something from them, you pick something up. But it's meeting your peers, and they may not be in the same industry, but they're doing a small business similar to you, and talking to them, getting to know them, and finding out what they're doing, and tidbits from them can always be helpful. It's invaluable. You know, it takes a bit of time away from the business, and we'll always, you know, time poor in our business, but I think you've got to do them, and much preferable than a big, you know, seminar, or sometimes one-on-one mentoring. I actually get more out of the peer groups.
yeah, but also when you meet other small businesses, you tend to gravitate towards them if you need other work done as well. You know, like a lot of our suppliers and our makers and things are small businesses too, so you tend to look after them, and then they'll look after you, because it's, you know, it's more of a human contact with each other as well, and the communication is open and things like that too.
It's also nice to have the occasional whinge and chat to these other small businesses, because I think most time, and the trade show on the weekend was a clear example to us. We met a couple of people, you know, brands that we've known for quite some time and we see around with things, and you start talking about similar scenarios, and you find out they have the same problems that we're facing. So it takes a load off your shoulders. You think it's not just us. We're not in this all alone. Other people are facing the same problems. So it makes you feel a little bit better about where you're going and where you're heading.
Especially if you're explaining it to others that aren't from your industry, or family members or whatever. Sometimes they don't always understand what you're doing, but if you're explaining to someone in the same, you know, line of field or whatever, they definitely understand. And sometimes you can give them advice, and sometimes they can give you advice.
So Dirt Girl World, that's very exciting. What are the plans for the future?
Well, it's taken a little bit of time to get to where it is, and I think, you know, it's a tortoise and hare type scenario. I think we've got to do it well, because I think as a small business, you never normally, or you may not come in to be offered an opportunity, I think, like a license like we've been given. to a brand that's probably better known outside of Australia than it is actually inside Australia. So hopefully, with the brand and taking it to where we would like it to go, it will create a bread and butter industry for not only Canberra but our business, and allow us to then take Pure Pod to where we feel it should be. It increase the cash flow. I mean, and at the same time educate the young people in what we're doing, because I mean that's one of the biggest reasons we wanted to join forces with Dirt Girl, is that or the brand Dirt Girl. The ethos is very similar to our own ethos, but it's aimed at the young kids. So if you can start educating them from the early ages, then by the time they're our age, it's already sunk in. It becomes standard.
Mm-hmm. So Pure Pod is really about selling a bit of a cause as well as a clothing line. You've been really active, quite active online. How have you found that as a tool to growing your business and growing awareness of what you're actually about?
Well, we're pretty political about it, really, as a brand, as a clothing brand. But like some of my gurus in the fashion industry would be like Catherine Hamnett, and she was like one of the first people to talk about nuclear arms and stuff, and she started the Choose Life t-shirts and things in the 80s, and she's really passionate about the environment and about the cotton growers and how they're looked after and all that sort of stuff. So those are the kind of people that I look up to. And like I could be in Melbourne with high paid design job with company car and all that sort of stuff, but I just couldn't go back to that kind of production of clothing. Whereas for me, this just feels right. I'm really passionate about it, and we're giving consumers a choice. So we're not just, creating fast fashion crap that doesn't fit properly, falls apart in the first season, and then it ends up in landfill because that fashion's out and gone. And really, the consumer has to realise it's just this big money-making machine that, they might bring out a new style every single week, or every single or 80 new styles in one store every, couple of weeks or whatever. So imagine all the pollution that's left over, or the clothes that don't get worn, or the clothes that don't get sold, or the offcuts of fabric on the, the cutting room floors, the dyes, everything. Whereas what we're doing is we're doing smaller, tighter ranges that are giving consumers who want to be conscious about what they're wearing a choice. And we're doing all the background work for them, so they can just go and buy our clothing, and they know that it's not 100% where we want to get as clean and green as possible, but we're getting to a stage where we're able to change the big pollution vehicle at least 60 or 70% along the way. So yeah, we're pretty political. Plus environmental issues we talk about. Sometimes we can put people's noses out of joint.
So social media has. As a small business, is a huge, powerful tool these days. It has allowed us to exactly what Kelly was just saying then, to voice her wishes to whoever wants to listen to it, and she won't be, gagged. It's free. It is so powerful for a small business to build a following and a brand awareness compared to businesses of 20 years ago that just had nothing like it.
So we've got followers from all around the world that watch us all the time. There was shops in America constantly watching us all the time too. So you have to be really, you don't know who's watching out there. Sometimes you post things and think, oh, should I post that? But
it doesn't. I don't think it matters. What social media does is give a real face to a brand. And if it's, I understand that certain brands have whole rooms full of people running their social media.
It's us.
But I think that the general public are aware of that now too. But what can be achieved by social media is nothing that PR and advertising could have done 20 years ago. They created brands, but they weren't brands, and they weren't. There was no soul in their advertising, and I think through social media there can be soul. People can see through it, and it's whether somebody's worried about what they put on to Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. If it's true to the brand, then the people watching and following will either comment left or right of it, and it doesn't really matter.
But also what I like to show too, because I think there's a big push away from like big chain stores. Like there's always going to be people that buy from chain stores, but I think there's a big push all around the world of, you know, all these big designer markets. So people want to know that they're buying a product that has a story, and they want to feel good about what they're buying, and then they can tell their friends. Like we've got stories of people writing to us saying, I was walking down the street in Collins Street and this woman said blah 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 to me, or smiled, or whatever, or they met each other at, you know, by accident at the theatre in Melbourne or wherever it was. You know, people write to us all the time because there's a story behind their clothing, and it creates a conversation with people when they're wearing our women's wear clothing. So hopefully the same goes with the kids. But like also, like on social media, we can show that we're not this big, massive, you know, global brand. We care about who's making our clothes. We're a small family, you know, creative couple that are passionate about what we do, and we want the people that buy our clothes to realise that, you know. And through social media we can show photos of us as a family, or, you know, us with the chickens in the backyard, or whatever it is, you know, and they can follow, you know, when we're with our makers, or, you know, the story of where the textile's made, or it's like showing a human content behind the product. It's not just, yeah, some massive factory, which also has a human content, but people don't realise that. Yeah.
If you could give 3 tips to somebody looking at starting out in a creative business, what would they be?
Good plan.
Yeah, good plan, but also be really passionate about what you're doing. It's not always going to be clear. You're going to be up and down. It's not a straight road to success, but along the way, whether it's good or bad, you're going to learn either way, and also have drive behind you.
And good passion. Plan, focus. You've got to be focused. If you're not focused, you're going to waver either side, and you know it. And I think a third point for me, you know, be realistic. I mean, people have big plans, which can be great, but those big plans, you know, might be just too big. Bring them down a little bit, or bring them up.
But you might have shorter goals.
Have a realistic level, and then if you make that level or you make past it, it's a good pat on the back. And if you're just getting there, it's still a pat on the back. But if you put the goals too high, or set the bar too high, it might be really hard to get there and achieve it in the time given. So
yeah, like we have certain goals that we wanted to get to, but along the way, you know, like different, you know, the economy affects you, you know, the Australian dollar affects you, what's happening with retail affects you, like the whole push with eco-fashion, it goes up and down sort of thing as well. So like everything's going to affect up and down. Some days are going to be great, other days, you know, you're going to be thinking, why am I doing this? But then the next day will be great again. So it's just the constant drive. Yeah, and have smaller goals, and then maybe a bigger goal at the end, but you can just go along the way, and each day you've got to, you know, reevaluate your goals.
But enjoy it.
How you can get there.
It's, you know, it can be frustrating, but if you're in, I think any small business that if you're enjoying doing it, it's better than going working for someone else.
You get so busy in your business that a lot of small business people don't take the time out to celebrate their successes.
That's true.
How important do you think it is to stop and actually look back and go, look at where we've come from, look at the amazing things that we've done, and actually celebrate some of those successes that you were talking about?
I reckon that we don't really do that until the end of the year, because, you know, you're so busy, like you have, you know, whatever trade show or designer market, or you've got wholesale to put out, or whatever it is, like each, you know, month you've got a different goal you've got to get to, and then, you know, plus making sales and all that sort of stuff. I don't reckon I really personally look back until the end of the year, because you think you're taking all these little baby steps and it's like 10 steps back, and then it's like, you know, 2 steps forward until the end of the year, and I think, oh wow, we actually did this and this and this year, and it's like, wow, that's amazing, I can't believe we just did that. Either, but
forget holidays, and that's probably when you would. I mean, no, you should take some time and enjoy the little highs. Unfortunately, I don't think we've ever taken the time. to enjoy the highs. We might,
win when we've had a win.
we might, look at,
awards.
look at each other and go, oh, that was great.
Yeah.
But hang on, we've got to go because tomorrow we've got this. Where we should actually take a little bit more time, and hopefully with where we've taken. I mean, fashion's a very finical business, but where we've taken Pure Pod and now incorporated the Do Girl World brand within that, hopefully, if that's as successful as we plan it to be, it might give us the actual time to actually take out.
Yeah, but then you have lots of employees probably and you'll never get time.
And that's probably a really a difficult point for anybody who's moving from a micro business to maybe a slightly larger. When do you bring on that first employee?
We've been talking about it probably over the last 6 months because you struggle along in the small business doing 1,000 different jobs. Being a master of, or a jack of all trades, a master of virtually nothing, until you get to the business to a point where I think it is now, where we both do 1,000 jobs, and we do them to the best of our ability. But it's time we actually brought in, but we've got to be able to afford it. But brought in people that do certain jobs, and it's their specialty.
Yeah, they're good at it, so it's enhancing our
marketing
skills as
and
well.
PR. Sales, they're just two areas that we really need. We've always worn those hats.
Even production management.
But
and stuff, whatever.
But that's not us. So our skills are probably better used in other areas, and bring people in that then can utilise their skills because that's their specialty to help us build.
But also because they'd be concentrating on one job, they're not concentrating on. Like when you might be doing one thing on, designing a garment or talking to a production manager or chasing money or whatever it is, you're thinking about 10 other things at once and you never switch off in small business.
It's very hard though because you've got to be able to finance it.
Yeah.
You can't bring somebody in and go, oh well, sorry, this week we can't pay you.
Yeah.
Because we're not
We've
getting
got
paid.
enough work. We've got enough work for them.
So that's always been the catch. We realise
probably most small businesses really.
that it's needed, but it's being able to afford it.
But also because we've got the fashion school here, and I'm a bit passionate about them because that's where I studied as well. So because I've been in the industry for over 20 years, it'd be nice to be able to pass that knowledge on, because a lot of the people that have studied here they're probably going to have to move to the biggest centres like Melbourne or Sydney, because that's where the fashion industries are, to get a proper realistic job. Whereas if we could put someone on here, it means they can stay in their hometown and they can still learn,
gain experience, and then go to
or
the big
they
areas
might grow
or stuff.
in our business, either way. But it'd be nice to be able to give that opportunity to a local person as well, or if they're in studying marketing or PR or whatever, that we can also give them, if they want to work in, fashion as well, we can give them that opportunity. So,
you talked about planning. Do you guys sit down and do a 5-year plan, a 1-year plan? How important is it on a practical level? We hear all about this in theory, what you should and shouldn't do, but you're very busy. So what works in practice?
Yeah, we probably, the planning, sitting in the car next to each other.
Yeah.
We probably sat down with a consultancy firm 6 months ago and talked about a marketing plan. They put, with the information given, they put something together. But before that, we've got a business plan that we put together 8 years ago, 6 years ago.
But talk about,
and that gets adjusted every now and then. I think business plans are great. I'm not a big believer in them because I think that they need to be adjusted all the time. I don't think you can envisage what's going to happen in 6 months' time and put a five-year plan together. It's great. It's it's pie in the sky as far as I'm concerned. I think business plans should be something that's looked at on a weekly or monthly basis.
It can be simpler. It can be more like a point form thing of 1 month, 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years, even just points of where you want to head to.
From our first business plan, we've actually almost achieved what we wanted to, except in volume of sales.
Yeah, but that's been also hit with the
Yeah, but I mean, apart from that, but we've ticked the boxes, and you know, with when we started to where we are now, you know, our last point on our business plan was to open a flagship store, and that's where we're sort of sitting at the moment. Is that,
we're ready to do it.
That's what we want to do
with finance,
with the brand and location as well. You know, finding the correct location, and especially within Canberra.
Yeah.
But we've gone through and we've well, not ticked the boxes, but achieved certain aspects. But I think it's got to be looked at really regularly, and really changing to the different environment that's coming on. You know.
Yeah, because when we started, you know, social media was 8 years ago. It wasn't that big. We did our first website with some uni students, and I remember thinking, who's going to buy clothes online?
The GFC
and now it would be like
yeah.
half of our sales easily, or if not more, because you know, and GFC hit. You know, loads of stockers closed down because they just couldn't survive in the market. Plus, with high retail things, plus they've also got to compete with all the designers online now. You know, offshore, everything you can buy everything from all over the world now. So they're not just got their little bricks and mortar store. They've got to compete with everything. So a lot of shops closed. But I think there's a bit of a resurgence with that as well now. I think a lot of, especially with women's clothing, you want to try it on. Like you want to feel, touch. Like our stuff is so different when people feel it as opposed to when they look at it online, because feeling it, that's where the beauty of the textiles come in.
But on par with planning, I think business coaching. I think that's something that's probably more important these days, that you have a plan, but I think a weekly or fortnightly or monthly meeting with a business coach.
But
that is someone outside of the business. Yeah,
but someone who's worked in your trade, I think, is really important as well. Like we've worked with a couple of business coaches along the years, and I've personally found the people that have worked in the trade understand it a lot more than someone who's been, you know, like they've studied business coaching or whatever. It's very different. Like,
is it more about mentoring? Is actually finding somebody who's been there, done that, and who is prepared to share their experiences and what worked and what didn't?
Yeah, which we could also do to a younger, you know, designer as well. Like I'd like to be able to pass that knowledge on and help them. But I would personally like to now, because we've worked with other business mentor people, is have someone who is further down the track than us, who's worked in, you know, the rag trade for a long time, that can kind of, you know, advise us. We don't always have to take it, but advise us on which way.
I think that's a mentorship compared. I think a business coach is completely different than a mentorship.
Yeah, but it depends on what kind of business.
No, I think mentor's great, coming from the industry, but I think a business coach could be someone who's operated an airline or you know, a gym or a takeaway, but very successfully. So like Robert D. Costello or Deeks, I think as a small business we would get a lot out of seeing how they set up their business. A product's a product. They don't know anything about fashion, we don't know anything about baking, but it's still selling a product to the public and getting it out there. So I think business mentors are fantastic too, but I think a business coach can be really important as well. And it doesn't have to be from the same industry.
Do you think it would be great for Canberra if we start bringing expertise in from outside of Canberra? Yes. Where we're starting to learn from, whether it's in the same trade, but where the businesses, you know, learning from that kind of expertise, that Canberra now needs to start thinking outside of its boundaries in terms of supporting businesses.
I think so, because there's always been that public service mentality in Canberra, and I think it's a public service based city, and I think people sit back on those laurels, but bring people back in, or bring people from outside to assist the businesses that are starting to boom here now, because there's not the experience across the board for all industries that businesses need to actually hear or listen to or learn from here in Canberra because of the majority of public service departments. It's a different way of working.
Well, Sean and Kelli, thank you so much for your time today and sharing some of your experiences, and all the best for Dirt Girl World and Pierpont.
Thank you.